quitting some apps here just to get some more bandwidth. So should we kick off?
Yeah, sure.
Or should we wait?
Give 2 minutes. Okay. A warm welcome to all the participants who joined us today. Who joined us take us through this delivery webinar, wherein we type of this new approach.
So, hi everybody. As Pika said, my name is Chris Forsberg. I'm the Global Chief Architect at Sogeti, and I've been thinking about delivering in a more agile and faster way for a couple of years now. And I just want to share it with you. So, most of our clients currently have 3 questions. The first is, how does a digital version of our business look like? The second is, what do we need to support such a business? And the third question is, how can we speed up? How can we move faster? I will not address the 2 first questions here, but there are separate presentations on that if you're interested. The short answer for the first question is that you should basically think that you're starting over today. If you were to sell everything and fire all employees, etc., and just start over, what would you do in the business that you're in? That's a good place to start to think about how your digital business would look like. The short answer to the second question is that you should think about setting up a digital platform. A digital platform is the foundation for doing a digital transformation and creating what we have been talking about lately, which is digital happiness. So in this context, I often talk about an happy texture, which is a digital platform that enables digital happiness. But the third question is what I will focus on today, and that's the short answer. It's working in new ways. So, I think many of our clients have heard about Agile. They've seen the videos and they've seen the presentation. They went to seminars, etc. But many ask me, how do you really get started? How do we get started practically? Because it feels like a big change to the current organization in silos, etc. So I will address that. That will be like the last third of the presentation. So what you see here is an image of a 360 video from one of our clients, which is working in this way. The name is ING Bank in the Netherlands. And I think it shows what a beautiful delivery could look like, and that's what I will talk about today. So yeah, well, you can change the picture. Yeah, so we can go to the next. So, but before I just want to talk about the overall focus for any organization. So we can go to the next. So traditionally, most people have been saying that we should make money, right? That's a good goal, and it was stated very clearly in 1970 by Milton Friedman. And one of the biggest users of that approach is Jack Welch, that ran GE for a number of years, 20 years. And he later dubbed it an dumbest idea. So a better idea is probably to think about what Peter Drucker said in the 50s, which is that we should start by focusing on the customer. And I think both are important, but it's not a bad idea to start with the customer and then think about how the business can benefit. So we can go to the next. So when you think about it, it seems like a small difference, but it's actually a very drastic difference to actually put the customer in the center. Sometimes I compare it to what Copernicus and Galileo did with the view of the universe. What we had before is what is called geocentrism, which is putting the Earth in the center. And I think many organizations still see the world like this. They think they are the center of the universe, and the problem is, I mean, it's not wrong to do it. I mean, it's just taking a subjective view of the world. The problem is, as you can see in this image, is that the universe around you would look confusing because you aren't the center of the universe. Who is the center of the universe is the customer. And you need to start, and the customer in this example, comparing the Copernicus model, which is heliocentrism, is that the customer is in the center. And when you do that, you start thinking about, you know, your place in his or her universe. And that's really, if you think about it, it's really a more, unegoistic way of doing it. I mean, on a humanistic level, it's actually about compassion. It's about putting someone in front of yourself. So when you're doing this, I mean, in workshops and thinking about new products, etc., try to think about, okay, where are our clients? I mean, what do their world look like? And I think this is very crucial. So we can go to the next. So when you understand that your organization has to be obsessed by the customer and putting them in the center, you also realize that that has to be the primary focus for all the employees. All the employees in everything they do, and even if there are like process and tools and technology needed, which we are happy to provide, the mindset is much more important. I want to talk about something that was promoted a while ago on YouTube, which is a video called the Adaptable Mind, and I can share it after the presentation if you're interested. But one of the 5 things I want to point out is kind of a new profile of these people, and it starts with the empathy and think about how other people feel. It goes on with curiosity and trying to find new things, and creativity to put those things together in new ways. And then the most important is actually to commit and do something, take an initiative and actually do something, because talking about ideas doesn't help a lot. And when you are committing and engaging in a problem, you need to use cross-disciplinary thinking, and that means asking other people for help. And we probably know all these things, but we need to practice them every day to grow. So I think the big shift, I can talk a lot about this, but the big shift is that we're looking for new things in people. Before, it was people that were experts on specific areas. Now, the ability to take different roles is much more important. So more of an entrepreneur kind of approach, and that's what I am pushing very hard internally in our company, but also when we work with clients, that people need to be part of something bigger instead of being a very specific expert on something. They will probably be experts in some area, but they need to be able to do everything. So one thing that people are asking, these kinds of people specifically are asking for is a purpose, right? They want to do something valuable. And one way of doing that is to put together an autonomous team. So we can go to the next. So let's look at a day with an autonomous team. So we can go to the next. So this is a scenario where the morning starts with the product owner getting an idea from a customer on social media. It could be a tweet. She checks the analytics and confirms that this is a problem for many users. She gathers a team, they talk about it. They talked about the implication when it comes to the user experience, the design, the technical implementation, and maybe even if there is a change in the business model. They conclude that it's urgent, so they decide to do it today. So we can go to the next. So what happens then is the owner and the tester write assumptions, and the Agile coach breaks it down to specific tasks. The architect starts sketching the solution. The designer sketches the user experience. The developer prepare for the implementation. And 1 hour later, the team goes through everything, and they now have a clear picture of what they want to do. So we can go to the next. So what happens then is that the developer, as I call it, which is the combination of developer and operation, I will come back to that, start to code, commit often, and because there is an automatic deployment built in here, everybody gets the new build constantly. So everybody can iterate on parts of the solution, even the scope when it comes to the product owner, etc. But also the architecture, the design, and the tests, and you know, any quality assurance that we need. And there is a constant sync going on between everyone, and often there is work in pairs, so people work together. And of course, there is a frequent validation, so each of these builds that are distributed, if it's an app, it's distributed out to the phones constantly during the day, is validated by the tester, and the feedback is brought back to the developer and the other people in the team. So we can go to the next. So at the end of the day, they have something that they can release to early adopters, and they even invite the customer that was you know, giving them feedback in the morning, and ask him or her to participate in the test of the new feature. And this posting on social media is how the team does marketing. So there is no separate, you know, marketing activity going on. This is how the team communicates with users. And before they go home, a very important part is that they capture what they learned when they did this. They adjust how they work and the tools they use, but also it could be a refactoring of the architecture and the code. So we can go to the next. So let's look at how all this magic happens behind the scenes. So we can go to the next. So what this is about working faster with higher quality. So there is no trade-off there. And all of that is enabled, of course, with automation. But if we start with the organization, it's about putting together these autonomous teams and groups of these teams, and all the way to ecosystems that involve, you know, partners and competitors, etc. So the team, I mean, this is the most important part. The team is responsible from customer needs all the way to run in production. So let me repeat that. The team is responsible from customer needs to run in production. So there is no other like departments or any functional parts of the organization involved for testing or operations, etc. They run everything, and they also capture you know, the feedback from the users, etc. So I will come back to that. Everyone is responsible for everything. That's also important. There is no like you know, he or she is responsible for that, etc. There are some areas that somebody is focusing more on, but in the end, everybody is responsible for everything. So the end result, it means that everybody needs to contribute if something is not working, right? And especially when it comes to quality. It's not the responsibility only for the tester. It's rather something that has to be built in from the beginning with the developers, etc. And the same goes for security. We need to talk about these things from the beginning and daily. I'm in this kind of project today with a large grocery retailer in Sweden. And for example, we talk about GDPR every day. It's part of what we do. It's not something that somebody in the team handle. Everybody needs to be involved and understand what privacy means because it affects everything. So, and the other part is, that was the organizational part. The other part, of course, is technology, and automation is the most obvious thing. And the goal is to automate everything, from build, test, deployment, distribution, everything, but even task management and feedback loops. So I always go, to the length to say that everything manual, every manual operation is a bug. So and at the end, as I said before, everything comes down to continuous improvement. So you try to find how you can do things better every day. So it's not like we settle on a specific process. So we can go to the next. So this is the basic approach. It's a very typical approach in most startups. You start with an assumption, you find the simplest way possible to prove it, you prototype or build a product, but remember that the most expensive way, slowest way to know if the users want something is to actually build it. So try to find other ways of doing that. It could be a hack. It could be app screens on paper. It could be a person, pretending to be a chatbot. All these kind of hacks will give you the answer if this is a valuable feature, and you should try to explore them before you actually build something. But when you build something, set up the metrics to evaluate that what you're building is actually usable. So that's really important, to find the metrics, and then you learn and refactor, as I said before. So I think it's important. I try to avoid using the word requirements, for example, because they are really assumptions, and I also try to emphasize that in the projects where I participate by putting a question mark after the user story. So, if somebody wants to do something because of this, and then you put a question mark just to point out that this is an assumption and not a truth, which it could be seen like if you just write it as a normal user story. I also like to add to the user story how you can prove it, how you can prove that it's actually a valuable thing. So I think it's good because that will help you to set up the metrics, etc. So we can go to the next. So this is the Agile process that the team is using. It's very similar for you, those of you who are working with Scrum. And as I said, you can start with something like Scrum, but if you have a team, they will find their own way. So they will probably add and remove stuff from any process to find the best way for them to work. But basically how it works, you have new ideas that you bring into a backlog, and the product owner prioritize the backlog with value versus effort. And then when you start the sprint, usually like 2 or 3 weeks, you select some of these features, those that give the most value for the least effort, and then you iterate and build something that you release to real users. It could be early adopters first, and then to all the users that you have, and that's actually a good idea. You can do A/B testing, etc. Release some version to some users and another to other users, etc. And of course, you have a daily stand-up every day to make sure that the team share what they're learning all the time. And then you see at the bottom there, there is a constant flow of monitoring and feedback coming from the real users. And sometimes, if it's important, it can even go into the current sprint, and then it goes back to the backlog of new features. So yeah, we can go on to the next. So let's look at some of the roles. We can go to the next. I will go through this really quickly, and please get back to me if you want more details. There is a blog post on this, and I have some videos on YouTube, etc. But I just want for you to see the roles. So one of the important roles is a product owner, which represented the stakeholder, which is the voice of the customer, usually. That define the metrics and the customer journey, and also prioritize the user stories, as we talked about. The product owner also do much of the communication with the external stakeholders and other people. So she's kind of the face of the team. So we can go to the next. And here are some of the tools that she uses. For example, effect mapping. It could be also value stream mapping, etc. It's the same thing basically. And we can go to the next. This is an example of a service blueprint with the customer journey and all the systems that are affected. The next. She, of course, is a freak in metrics and analytics to find out what actually works. So we can go to the next. So the next important role is the Agile coach. And basically the main idea with the Agile coach is to make themselves unnecessary. So this is kind of the old manager, which if she is doing the right thing, over time she will not be needed because the team is self-organized. So that's the goal of this person. Practical things that she does is set up detail the requirements or assumptions, whatever you want to call them, into something that users can the other team members can work on. And also generally coach the Agile process. So we can go to the next to look at a few tools. Of course, she uses something like requirement management and work management tools. We can go to the next. So then we have the architect. The interesting thing here, maybe for some people, is that the architect is not somebody sitting in a separate architect office. It's a person that is part of the team, maybe not full time, depending on the team size, but it's part of the team and doing architecture in real time. So there is no 6 to 3 months, doing some architecture design first. This is the person that has to do things in real time. And some of the tasks is setting up a digital platform, responsible for all the configuration management, and also coach the implementation. So this goes for all the team members. Everybody needs to be hands-on. So there is no need for people that do kind of documentation or middle management or stuff like that. So all the people in the team produce stuff. So of course the architect can code. And also look at the overall, the master data and service interface. So we can go to the next. So one important tool that the architect uses is the digital platform. Of course, this is our reference architecture. I won't talk a lot about it, but this is kind of the foundation for setting up a digital platform. So we can go to the next. And yeah, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is an example from implementing the reference architecture on a Microsoft using Microsoft technology, and we can go to the next. And here is one mixing different platforms, and I think this is where we're going long term. We will pick and choose services from different clouds and different providers. So I don't think there will be like the old kind of shop thinking where you you mainly go with Microsoft tools or you go with IBM tools or etc. You will use services from all of them, and it would be very much easier to do that. So we will have, for example, maybe single sign-on between the clouds, etc. Yeah, we can go to the next. What happens, and I won't go into this deeply, but what happens is that each team, they own their part of the service ecosystem. So they own some services that some other team uses, and they also own some things, touch points, for example, that users or customers are using. So this is kind of the situation you end up with. And one interesting detail is that this removed the need for environments. So there will be no more development, test, or production environments. All this will go away, and it will just be services with different maturity, and each team chooses which maturity or version that they want to use for a specific service. And this also helps all the old kind of integration testing, etc., because you basically test what you are building, and you have an SLA for each of the services of the other teams. So you can build on this to bigger products and releases without needing any things like safe. They talk about a release train or something that needs to be synchronized between the teams. I mean, they're just using the services that are there, and they can choose which maturity they need for their purposes. So we can go to the next. This is something that, yes, an architect uses still cloud management, and we have a great offering around this. But I think over time, starting to use serverless and putting more of the operational part on the cloud provider, this will also go away. So we can go to the next. So this designer, of course, designs the user experience, but again, is hands-on, so can also do all the graphics design, etc. So we can go to the next just to show some tools that the designer use. This is the user experience, and next one is, you can go to the next, and that's the graphics design. So we can go to the next. And this is a role that is changing a lot, I think, which I call the developer, which manages, I mean, this person does the code implementation, but also operates the environment in production. So there are probably different maturities, as I said, of the different services, but they basically work with, I should change the operate environments here because I think that's going away as well. But what they're doing is operating the services with different maturity in different, like testing and production, etc. But it's really just one environment. So yeah, we can look at some of the tools in the next slide. You can go through, and this is the development environment, and the next. This is an example of a continuous build, test, and deploy. This is the Microsoft App Center. And then we have the tester, which I'm trying to think of a better name, because this person in these teams have a more kind of leadership role, being responsible for quality, but also being hands-on. So sometimes I call it like a test engineer, which code the automatic tests, but also promote both quality, but also security, because they're very closely related in most cases. So this is a person that pushes everybody else to be better, to simplify. So let's look at some of the tools of the tester in the next slide. This is an automated test set up with Selenium and Appium. We can go to the next. And which is interesting also, of course, that the quality guy or girl uses more tools. And this is a device cloud from Microsoft, the Submarine Test Cloud, to be able to test on real devices in the cloud. So yeah, we can go to the next. So how do you get started? That's the question I started with in the beginning. I think that's something that many of our clients are asking. They have seen this. They have seen Agile, and they've seen DevOps presentations, etc. But the most interesting part is how do you get started, because that's where it gets tricky. So moving to the next slide. I think the easiest way to get started is to do it in 3 steps. The first step is to find something that is business important, maybe not the most critical part, but something that is important. In the best case, it's something that the organization have been struggling with for a long time. And it could be a touch point like a web or an app or, I don't know, chatbot or something. And the more customers that are, could benefit, the better. And you get the executive support. I mean, you get the executive. I mean, the leaders in the company, preferably on the top level, engaged in this, so that they see the benefit, and then you set a clear goal for this. The next thing you do, we can go to the next slide, is to set up a digital platform, probably in the cloud. And the main point of the digital platform is to allow the touch points to move faster than the back-end systems. So I repeat that. It's allowing the touch points, the apps and the webs and the bots and the connected things, to move faster than the back-end systems. And I can go deeper into that. It's a separate presentation, but it's possible. And the foundation is to allow you to create beautiful digital solutions. So the recommendation is to go with the public cloud. You can have some interim solution with private clouds or on-premise or whatever. But in the end, I think most will run their stuff in the public cloud. We see in the projects that I'm part of that, the main argument that it's more secure in their own data center or in a private cloud is actually an illusion. Most of the cloud provider has much higher quality and also security in place. So, and also, of course, here, make sure that you have an architect involved to set up, manage, and govern the whole thing, like integration with backend systems and external services, like identity management and stuff like that. So we can go to the next. So when you have those two, you have executive support, you have a digital platform. Now it's time to put together the autonomous team that I talked about before. And let them create their own environment. It goes for everything from the physical workspace to the tools that they use, the way that they work, etc. And the only thing that the only boundaries that you set for them is that they have some kind of budget and that they actually deliver. So set the first delivery date, maybe a sprint 0 in 2 weeks, and then the first sprint in. So let's say after a month, they should deliver their first delivery, which is, again, to production. So we can go to the next slide. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that this team is not killed by the traditional ways of working, the silos, etc. And I think that's where the executive support is crucial. So what they do is they work like a startup in an uncertain environment. So they should be allowed to experiment within the boundaries again. They have a budget and they have this delivery slots, I mean, every other week. So the risk is actually very small because you can follow what they're doing all the time. So it's easy to follow their progress, but it's also easy to stop if they're not making the right progress. So the risk is minimal. Okay, so we can go to the next. So my advice, I mean, I've been thinking a lot lately about this scaling up. I won't talk too much about it here, but I think it's the important thing is not to scale up too fast. One good example is that Microsoft did this journey themselves, and what they did was they started with one team. This guy here is called Aaron Björk. It was one team in the development department at Microsoft that started working this way, and then he got, other teams got interested when they saw that this was working, and then as you can see here on the timeline, it grew into Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, in 2015 said that this is the way our company is working now, so that the rest of the organization should adopt the same practices. It took them, like, I think 6 or 7 years, and most of the other examples I've seen, for example, ING Bank, as I mentioned, also took like 6-7 years. You should actually, if you have interest, you should go and look up what they did at ING Bank. It started with their CIO, which is called Ron van Kemenade, and he started this, revolution of agile thinking, and also what he called engineering, focusing on engineering talent, right? So what he did, he's blind, but what he did, he learned to code Java just to show everybody that it's important to have, the hands-on kind of depth when you're doing this. And he, set up like evenings where he was buying pizza and stuff, and people could meet and code together and do their own projects, etc. And today they have, I think, 400 teams at ING Bank working this way. And there are some videos both by Ron and also his chief architect. His name is Henk Polk. And if you search for ING Bank Agile or something in YouTube, you can watch the videos. It's really interesting to follow their journey there. Other examples are Spotify, but Spotify is a bit different because they started Agile from the beginning. They had one of the they had a few at least of the main Agile people globally in the team from the beginning. So the management and these Agile gurus created Spotify to work this way from the beginning. So that's a rare example of somebody who started doing it from the beginning. But usually, it's about transforming an existing organization. And there, as I said, my recommendation is to start small, make sure that it works, and then you can grow from there with more teams. And again, the whole discussion about how you, bring this up to a bigger organization, a bigger level with more teams, is not in the scope of this webinar, but there will probably be another webinar by me in the future where I go into those parts. One thing I would like to say is that be cautious to look at things like SAFe, which is an attempt, I think, to bring in kind of the old waterfall roop kind of process into Agile. Which is, I don't think, I mean, yeah, there are maybe some good examples of organizations that have been successful with that, But in general, I think it's kind of too restricting to put those kinds of rules and the delivery train, etc. I think there are better agile practices even on scale, and I mentioned a few of them, like the teams owning their services and not having environments, etc. Okay, so we can go to the next. So coming back to us, Sogeti, I think that there are a number of things that we can help with. We can deliver a complete team, which we do in many cases. We help our clients with complete teams. I try to advise not to have really only Sogeti teams at our clients. I think it's a good idea to include people from the customer in these teams. And there are several reasons for that. Probably the client persons know their business better, which is always important. Also, it's a way to transfer this way of working to our clients, because I think one of our main purposes is to help our clients doing this journey. And I think the only effective way of doing it is doing it iteration by iteration, where they see how this works and how it's very efficient. Just to take an example, I was part of going in at the client. They had 40 consultants doing, one project with apps. It was a competing consultancy, and they had daily stand-up with these 40 people, and it wasn't very effective. It was very slow, and also their technology choice was not optimal. They had a cross-platform solution, which usually does not deliver the best user experience for apps. So what we did was that we set up this kind of team. I think we started with 4 or 5 people. We basically rebuilt what the 40 people had done for 10 months. We rebuilt it in a couple of months. I think it was 2 or 3 months. So this way of working, I know that it works. And I think that you can get a lot more speed and a lot more efficiency if you try it. Talking about how we can participate, yes, we can take one of the roles in the team. The problem with that is that it's really hard for one person to transform culture, because the important, you got the message now in the presentation, that the important thing is to move the way that people think and the way that people work, rather than using specific tools and doing wizardry like automation, which is important, but it's not the most important thing. And it's difficult when you have only one person that knows the process to spread that to the others. And if you have only one person, I recommend it be like the product owner or the agile coach, which has more influence on the team probably. And of course we can do, in the end, we can do all the technical stuff. You probably know that. We can set up a cloud platform in days that the team can use. We can configure the tools and all this automation that is needed. So, we have all the technical skills, and I haven't talked about it here, but we have behind our reference architecture, there is a technology stack of things that we recommend to use for different solutions. So don't hesitate to get back to me on that. Okay, so we can go to the last. So that was my presentation. I thought I would leave a couple of minutes for questions. So I don't know, Deepika, do we have questions in the Q&A, or should we do it verbally?
Participants, please feel free to ask any queries to the chat and Q&A sections. We have one first question from Wim, who says, If the developer is writing code during daytime and is on call for service outage at night, we might get into trouble with the unions that object to have people work and be available 24 by 7.
Yes, I agree. And of course, it comes down to, leveling the workload. We don't want to have fights with the unions, and I don't think it's necessary. The interesting thing is that if you do the right thing, if you are creating stuff with quality from the beginning, how should I say, the bad effects in production of operating these things is, it decreases a lot. So I think it's self-regulating. Another thing that is self-regulating is that if the developer is making the decisions about, how to implement things, knowing that he or she will also take care of this thing in production, will make those decisions a bit different. I've seen this transformation in a lot of developers moving from being crazy, idea-rich people that basically wants to build everything new that comes in their way and every new technology that comes in their way. But when they start thinking about, okay, but then I need to handle this in production, how will it work in production? Do I want to add 15 features at the same time? Or should we take one at a time, etc.? So I think it's kind of self-regulating, but I think also that it's important to not have people working at night or even weekends. And I see that, when we were deploying like 2 or 3 times a year, there was a lot of pain because there are so many things that has to be integrated, etc. But when you are deploying, to some environment for each commit. So in the teams I'm working with, maybe we have a deployment to the CI environment or the CI components that we call it, the services. We have it maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 times a day. And then we deploy to test, to the test services, to the test apps, for example, maybe 2, 3 times a day. And then to early adopters or end users every 2 weeks. So with that kind of frequency, the deployments become much easier. There is not so much friction, because if there is friction, you can't handle it. It takes too much time. So you need to make sure that there is no friction, and deploying often is, I think, the way to go there. I hope it was an answer to the question, Wim.
Right. So any more questions, anyone? Please ask through the chat and Q&A sections. We have just few more minutes left.
Okay. So yeah, do we have a question?
Yeah, we have one more question from Wim again, who says, are T-shaped team members real? If every team member has to be trained on every product, technology, approach, the number of hours of training will explode. So how do manage this?
Very good question. So I think it's a new way. This is a big subject that I'm also thinking about right now. I think it comes down to the new way we look at competence and skills. We have had in technology, we have had like 3 revolutions in the last 30 years, like the internet and the web, and then the apps, and now we're going into a revolution with AI. I don't know if you saw the Google I/O presentation, but basically everything is influenced by AI in what they're doing now. So, but I think that the way that we have been working, specializing harder and harder into certain areas, is also changing now. We need people that are more cross-disciplinary. I realize this won't happen over day, but I think, for example, I'm talking to our global HR department about looking at a competence model where I see that the people that are level E, which is our kind of highest level for a consultant before they go into F, which is a VP, a level E person should be able to handle all the roles. So, and that is more or less 8+ years. So after 8 to 10 years, you should be able to handle all the roles. Before that point, you will probably have one or few of the roles, but I think we should encourage people to go broad instead of going narrow. I mean, it's good with some people that are experts, so let's not make everybody generalists, but I think that the general trend is that people should be broader than they are today, because it makes the teams more efficient. So we need to be pragmatic, of course, but the general direction is to be more general in your competence. So I hope that was a good answer.
Right. So Wim says great and thanks.
Okay. So we don't have any other questions. So I mean, it's always like this. A few minutes after we close, you think of a question. So don't hesitate to contact me. Send me an email or call me or something if you want to discuss more. I'm very happy to get both feedback and questions. So.
Right. Thanks, Chris, for taking us through this and letting us know about this new approach, which would be fruitful in our delivery streams as well. So thanks a lot for your time, and thanks all the participants for joining us today. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.